Because we have such an interesting topic again, and I know Dr. Jeffries has 4 hours of PowerPoint prepared for you. It's down to 35 minutes of what he's doing. There is, with Greener Ministries, there's a flyer that's on everybody's table. We invite you to take that and hand it out to some other people. Make sure you read it before you hand it out. Hand it out to some other people. There is a bash on Broadway to take place on October the 8th. They're going to do a rocket ride, motorcycle ride, and it's going to end at the bash on Broadway. During this, it's a fundraiser for the homeless shelter. The homeless shelter is funded solely by donations. So this is an opportunity for them to raise some additional money. They can use some help with items for the auction. They appreciate any merchandise, gift cards, and baskets that you may be able to help with. So all of that information is here on this sheet, and we'll get that in your all hands as well. And then Faith had mentioned about the recycling. Happy early birthday to Ian Moss. I know he's not here, but when you see him on the 30th, or if you see him around the 30th, just send him a note that says, hey, happy birthday. But you're Rotarian, excited about it, and then you can sing and dance when you get back. Also, for 2023, that will be starting in January for next year. We need some help with someone that is willing to help schedule the food for our events. So for each and every Wednesday, what we've been doing is setting up different locations, different restaurants that provide catering or an opportunity for us to pick that food up and bring it back. So if you would like to help with that, think about it this week. If you are just diehard ready to go, you can let me know. If not, let us know next week. Be willing to help serve in that capacity as Rotary. Without any further ado, I'm going to invite Dr. Jeffries of Campbellsville University up to do part 2 of AI or AI.
Thank you again for having me last week. I said it was an honor, so I guess this week it's a double honor to be here. I had asked a little bit about, was I too negative? And I think one of the comments was, well, can you give us some hope? And I think that was, when I asked, is there anything specifically you'd like to talk to? Because it is such a big topic. And I was just talking with Frank, and it's even finding a definition for artificial intelligence is a little bit difficult. It depends on who you ask. And so without going back and talking about what is AI, going over that again, what I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about, again, with the emphasis on hope. And so the first thing that I wanted, if you could just go to the next slide, the first thing I want to do is think about the idea of how does AI impact society? So that's I want to start off with that question. So how do you think AI impacts society, both positive and negatively? And I'll start with the positive, which is the advances in healthcare. And I think that it was mentioned last week about computer visual recognition, being able to look at a specific, I think it was a lesion or something, to be able to identify that. And there's other things that are being developed now. I'm reading a book called Industries of the Future by Ross, and he's talking about healthcare and how they use AI to help with being able to do the genome and to research into to our DNA and to map the genome and things. And then other things we can think about in the near future is the idea of long-term care and robots being able to sort of participate in and help with long-term care, in particular things like companionship. And so healthcare is an industry that is really looking into how artificial intelligence and robots can help. So is there any other ideas, anything, maybe even in the industry that you're in, where AI is being used? Yes.
This goes way back, probably before you. Every time you check out a grocery store, it's usually food store. Before that, I don't see how grocery stores would know how to price and barcodes and all that. That's
Inventory, and that's not just with the grocery stores, but even manufacturing. I know here in their economy that they use it to help with their just-in-time inventory, so they don't have to have a bunch stored and they get it what they need, and they also send out what they produce. Anyone else? Yes.
Ease of production and increase in turnaround times. I know I use a program, particularly it doesn't find, like when I pull in an image, it doesn't find the subject is, and it automatically has to knock out the background and put people in, and allow me to speed up the processes.
So again, the computer recognition, being able to put in the background really quickly, or to at least frame that image that or that particular object in the image. Yes.
Warren Ziegler was Kentucky's Agricultural Commissioner for policy for many years, and this past week he had an article in the News Journal talking about what an impact AI has had on agriculture. For instance, he gave his daughter has a state-of-the-art chicken house facility, and she's able to monitor that afar with an app on her phone. It will tell her about the chickens. It almost sounded like each chicken, how much it was eating, how much water it had had, was the temperature okay in the building, etc. And he also talked about the dairy industry, about how it monitors each cow that's giving milk, and it tells if the cow has a fever. And in fact, if the cow does, the system does not let that cow's milk go through the process with the rest of the milk. So there's just a lot even going on with agriculture that we're not aware of.
Absolutely. And in fact, agriculture as one of the largest and leading industries of the United States and of the world, really. Agriculture from a data standpoint is actually behind. And there's a lot of room for growth in agriculture when it comes to both data analytics and artificial intelligence. So any other references?
You have to mention education, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, what we can do in education now with artificial intelligence is so exciting. Somebody's learning, AI puts more material in front of them that relates to what they're learning, and then they have the option to drill down into those areas. And it's the same thing as marketing. It's just a massive tool that can be used for good or for bad. So
Absolutely.
I'm eager to hear what you have to say about that.
The personalization of education in particular, I think we're going to see more and more of. And that adaptability, as you were talking about, adaptive education, so that not only can it find out where you're at and take you beyond that and move you forward, but it can also figure out and find places where you might be lacking and need more information. Yes. Next slide. So just a quick refresh that it is good and it is bad. That's one of the things that I want to make sure as we move forward that we understand that the benefits are there, but we also need to have an eye on what the negatives are. And a lot of times the negatives are more, they're not as obvious. So we see the benefits and we hear about the benefits a lot, but some of the negatives are a little bit hidden. And unless we realize and have conversations about them, I think that they could get washed over and just become part of, well, it's the trade-off that we're doing. We get this, and I know we're trading maybe some loss of autonomy or data privacy, et cetera, but I think that those are important things to consider, especially when we're thinking about the individual, the community, and society. So next slide, if you don't mind. So my question is, what is your perception of artificial intelligence? When I say perception, how do you feel about it? What's your emotional response to artificial intelligence? Next slide. Well, if you're like the youngest generation, well, the generation that's now going through college, the Generation Z, then you may be a little bit uncertain. On one hand, you see it as a positive, but on the other hand, you're just not sure what it means to the individual and to society. You again, see and understand some of the benefits, but then you may be wondering, well, but what does that mean? Is it going to take my job? And so in research that has been done by others and myself, what we find is that there's a little bit of tension between the idea that technology is just advancing all the time, that we really can't slow it down. The technology, the inevitable advance of technology, it's called. And what that means to us as individuals and what that means to society as a whole. And so some of the things that that I looked at in particular was marketing. And generally speaking, Generation Z isn't that concerned with marketing. They sort of expect it. But when it comes to specifics that happen in marketing, like profiling, stereotyping, and manipulation, and data privacy, they are concerned. And so those two things are a little bit inconsistent. And why are they inconsistent? Is because those specific things are exactly what happens in marketing, especially nowadays on social media. And so the problem I see is they're just not educated on what's going on. They know it's happening, but what does it really mean to themselves and to the rest of society? The other thing I was asked was about the ethical development and use of AI. And so generally speaking, most of the Generation Z students, the participants, thought that discussions were needed when it came to ethics in artificial intelligence, but they weren't aware that any were going on. And then the other thing was they were more concerned about the long-term impact of AI rather than the short-term impact of AI. And what that means is that they know that in the future there might be some real issues that we'll have to deal with, but let's kick the can down the road. Right now, I'm just not as concerned. And so that means that I don't believe that we're having the correct emotional response to artificial intelligence that we should. Next. So what can we do? We passed the point of no return. We're not going to roll back the clock on this technology. It's with us. We're using it. We're becoming dependent on it. And so what can be done? Next slide. Well, let me stay there for a second. Any ideas on what we can do? What do y'all think? What do y'all think we can do? Yes, sir.
Information overload. It's beyond the ability of the human brain to absorb, regardless of how smart you are, particularly if you're changing different fields of technology.
So what can we do about that overload?
I'm not sure it's possible to fix it.
Even if we did have different strategies, what would we do with them? Who do we tell? Who acts upon it?
That's a really good question. Who do you tell? You tell your congressman, you tell people in the industry that are in charge of regulation, you tell their friends.
What would happen to this country if every computer crashed?
We have a dependency. We have a dependency on not just AI, but all technology. So,
All you gotta do is take out 3 or 4 grids and that happens.
absolutely. So some of the things that some of the experts in the field are talking about is there needs to be an intentionality when it comes to designing humans in or out of the picture. When it comes to employment or loss of jobs, when it comes to the concentration of power and wealth, then there needs to be an intentional and purposeful thought given to who gets to make that decision. Who gets to, and right now it's the designers. The designers and the owners of AI make those decisions arbitrarily. The other thing, the other question is not just who, but why. Why do those people get to make those choices? And so part of what the answer to the question is, how can we deal with what's going on, is to start asking questions like this about who and why those people get to make decisions. And of course, the first response is, well, they're the ones who are investing. They're the ones who are putting up the risk for developing this AI. But that also means that once they release that AI, if there's nothing been done to consider how it's going to impact society. I mean, let's take social media as an example. If we were to roll back the clock 10 years, and knowing what we know now, right? Hindsight being what it is, there might be a little bit more discretion given to how it's released and who it's released to, who can use those sorts of things. Because we're already seeing the impact of social media on our young people and us. And us. Not just, and the reason I put the Generation Z up there is to say we're not alone. No one really understands this. Even the people in the field are more concerned, when I say the field, the developers and owners are more concerned with getting it done and making it happen as opposed to how it might affect us all. And so these folks are saying it's not too late to consider who's doing it or who gets to make the decisions about design and why they get to make the decisions about design. And to realize that everything that is happening is going to impact things like social justice, inequalities. And so that's the first step, is just understanding that the design matters. The design up front matters. Next slide. And so paths forward include these three things, and these are things that I believe in. Number one is education. I think that we really need to educate about AI and technology in general, and more than a class is set up to learn how to do something, learn how to do technology. It's AI literacy or technology literacy is important, as well as interdisciplinary research. The fact that all facets of our society are being impacted by AI and technology, there needs to be a holistic view of it. Sociologists need to be involved, psychologists need to be involved. There needs to be a much wider range of people that are involved with what's being done and how and why. We have to have conversations. One of the things about education is we can, even though we can't always define specifically what AI is, we can start to have a common vocabulary to start thinking about. Because if I were to tell you, well, we're developing narrow AI, what's the difference in narrow AI and general AI? Well, the difference is narrow AI is about doing something really well, precise. And it might learn from that action, but it's limited to that action. Whereas general AI is about learning from all the data that it can encompass. And that's where we start thinking about the black box. When you hear about the black box in AI, what they're really talking about is the fact that they created an algorithm and not sure how it's actually working. The other thing is, from a regulation standpoint, let me back up the conversation real quickly, is that we have to have some conversations about what is responsible AI. What does that mean? Because if we think about what's responsible social media, I think we would have some very different ideas now than we did 10 years ago. but we need to start thinking about it from a holistic standpoint. Regulation, there needs to be some transparency and accountability. And one of the things that we know about industry is these are trade secrets, how this black box works. But these are paths forward that we can take, that we can initiate as from a social standpoint. And we can be involved in, we can all be involved with the conversation. And even with the education, because if you're talking to someone that's 20 years old right now, they know about as much about AI as you know. Which isn't a lot based on what my research and others have shown. Next slide. For example, biotech and nuclear industries. They were able to find a balance between regulation and what they needed to do, what their goals were. There was a vocabulary created, there were regulations created. They looked at how would it impact humanity? What are the human rights involved? And so that's interdisciplinary. So there are examples out there of how it's done. And at the end, the transparency and accountability through industry and social regulation. So not only through conversations and through making it interdisciplinary, these industries were able to, for themselves, say, we need to self-regulate this. This could get out of control. And so there are examples out there. Next slide. And so one of the things that came from our conversation last week that really hit home to me is I had focused in on small business. I had looked at small business as a business professor. My thinking was, how can I look at how AI can help small businesses? Because we know that large companies are already involved with data analytics and AI. But what about smaller business? What about the mom and pop shops or medium-sized businesses that could benefit? And then after speaking with Ayla at my table last week, the idea came to me like, what about the community? If I'm going to be talking about how AI impacts society and that the benefits need to be shared, maybe it's already possible. Maybe it is already possible. It's just not because there might not be a lot of monetary gain out of it. It's not being done. So my question to you is, right now, what might be some issues? What might be some challenges within our community that AI could come to bear? Yes, ma'am.
Maybe alleviating workforce strains,
Say that again.
like alleviating some strains within the workforce, like everyone's, still trying to battle for employees. It's kind of had thoughts of using it maybe like police station for trafficking, being able to kind of be predictive what might be happening going in the drugs and sections, being able to alleviate the pressures of the individual, being able to kind of coincide and work.
Some predictive response, emergency response. Absolutely. We already know that it's really good at predicting things like, how much consumers might buy or where there might be heavy traffic loads, things like that. So why not when it comes to emergency response? At least from a prediction standpoint, which is really what AI is really good at least having an idea that there might be an issue to consider. What other issues?
I think it could be a culture, society thing as well too. Just from the standpoint of us as an insurance agency, we have all this technology, but folks still want to come in, see you and pay their bill when they can do it through an app, they can do it online. That sort of thing as well too. It's just our culture here. Folks still just want to drive in and see you.
We still crave that personal connection.
Yeah.
The personal connection. Okay. So where's I guess, what's the, help me understand.
Well, I just from, like, like you were saying, just a disadvantage of it, I'm seeing, like Faye was saying, just from a personal standpoint, a lot of folks just want that personal information versus through AI.
Well, another example of that, you call somebody and then you get 4 or 5 different responses and then you gotta press 4 buttons. That's much worse than talking to an operator who knows what's going on. I mean, I think aren't that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
You need to talk to a person on the other line rather than to talk to a computer.
Absolutely. I think communication is one of those areas where it is a challenge for society to deal with that. On one hand, some people do want that personal connection and then they want to come in and see you. And on the other hand, we want to get to the information quickly. And these chat bots or these robocallers that you pick up whenever you call someone, that can seem really impersonal.
It can be a barrier for what population you're looking at too, because you have your older population that all these things are going digital and you've got to call this and like you said, pay some things online and they can't do it. So it puts a dependency on them and then, you know, their freedom is essentially.
So part of the challenge is them embracing the technology that they're not comfortable. Absolutely. Yes. Sir.
Yeah, I think the idea of criminal investigation might be one of those areas where it's common good, where there's so much opportunity right now for AI to enter into the system to track what's going on with fentanyl, with meth, you know, whatever kind of tax evasion, all these different areas, just by managing data and taking a more sophisticated approach that a single individual in the FBI can take. But, you know, there you go back to, how's it going to produce money? It's not a revenue generator, it is a community saver because it does preserve the community from a lot of these things.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And it as a not being a money generator, I think that it has to be society in general is going through a lot of changes. We're seeing a lot of new ideas, embracing new ideas and ways of doing life. And I think that needs to extend even to the corporate world and society. Corporations as part of society may have to take a little bit more of a people over profits, where we can partner with them. And so these ideas of being able to track and maybe monitor and predict. So one of the things that happens, that is happening that we're not really aware of is disease tracking, disease monitoring. And so as the flu season starts, you can kind of see where that's going. You may not be able to exactly know where the next outbreak's going to be, but you can see how it's growing and where it's most likely to. The same thing might be true from tracking, you know, these illicit drugs and these deadly drugs. And so again, I'm not here to have answers to these specific questions, but I'm saying, why not have conversations? Why not start trying to find places where AI could come into play, where we might be able to partner with corporations for the good of society, leverage what they've done to help all.
And what Dr. Hopkins says about data is so important. We live in a very safe city right now, but we need to have all the data we can gather to understand what's really going on in our community. I know with city council, we have certain departments give us reports, but it's just information on the surface. There's no, I'm going to say underground information as to why those numbers are as they are. So to protect our society, even in our own community, we need to be more in tune to data so that we can know what's best to do for our future.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, the backside of that is, how do you know that input of the data is correct. We have a real problem with that in medicine. Yeah, who's putting in the data, how accurate it is, how they interpret it, and what do you do with these huge data banks, and how accurate is that in taking care of individual patients?
No, the output is only as good as the input. And that has taken, there's been a lot of attention given to that in terms of being able to get that data and AI to use it effectively. And so there's a lot going on. That doesn't mean it's perfect. That doesn't mean that there's not room to be better. But we understand how important data is from a collective standpoint, and in particular, from a corporate standpoint. Data is, in fact, there was an old movie, Creed, I don't know if you all remember that one. It was Kirk Douglas, and he said something to the effect, information is king of gold. And so that's even more true now. Our systems run on data. One of the things that occurred to me, and again, this is just brainstorming. This is part of the discussion and conversation that I want to have. This is where hope comes in. Is that what if there was a way to match, like the dating site, match up needs with the right provider, whether it's someone who might be just some financial help, psychological help with addiction, and find someone, even if that someone is virtual. We're getting to the point where the human computer interaction is becoming more and more common. And how we leverage that and how we think about the development of that and the design of that is really important and good to have conversations about, because some people are going to be more engaged with technology, or at least from a virtual. That may not be true of us in this room, but it's true of some of my students because they said so. Next slide. So one of the things that I want to bring to your attention is, again, I've already been and continuing to look at how AI is impacting Generation Z and the workplace. But after our meeting last week, as I mentioned earlier, I started thinking about small, like the community and researching in the community. So some of the things that I do in class already is I try to find people within the business community to give us a project. I do final projects in my classes, and so what we do is we take this project that somebody might have and just give them some innovation or give them some ideas. It may be innovation, it may be depending on what the project is. Well, why not? Why not do it with community service? I mean, the goal is not for us to come up with an answer and implement it. The goal is for us to research and find out what the options are and to provide possibly a strategy or a path forward. And so that, from an education standpoint, is one of the things that now is important to me, because I think we need to start exploring these types of ideas. And not only that, but it engages the student. It engages the student with the businesses. It engages them and hopefully with the community in this case. Gives them some real world experience, what it's like to work for a client. And believe me, they deal with clients a lot different than they deal with their professors. You can see it. So that's part of it. And also just my research into how AI is really going to impact us in the workplace. And what, from a Generation Z standpoint, how are they going to work alongside AI? The other thing is conversation like this, speaking with you, finding out what your perceptions are, what your ideas are. There's already been several really good ideas. I do a podcast. Usually it's my guests that make it work. Dr. Hopkins has been a guest on the show. But I did a general podcast, and I'm going to start focusing in on AI. I'm going to start talking to people like yourselves about artificial intelligence, how it's impacting. We have to have these conversations. We don't have to be experts in the field. And I think that that's part of what we found out earlier is people are suggesting that it needs to be interdisciplinary. And not just interdisciplinary from an academic standpoint, but cross-cultural. Members of the community involved with helping to better make AI better for all. And so that's really my message today, my message of hope, if you will, is that we're still in the early stages. We understand our dependency on technology and AI in general. And we need to start talking about it. Be comfortable not knowing everything. Even people in the field, there's only a few who know it all because it's such a vast and quickly developing technology. Next slide. I do want to leave you with this. So, am I an alarmist? Probably. Because here's the reality. If we think about intelligence on a scale from, let's say, a mouse and a human, you would put humans at a certain level. If there was, if you were to graph it out, mine's down here, humans up here. Albert Einstein. Right? The question is, we do not know what superintelligence is. We can only base superintelligence on anthropomorphized, making it human. We don't know. And so there is hope, but it has to be a groundswell, is what I believe. And we have to take advantage of the fact that it's still early days. There's a lot going on. There's tons going on, from autonomous cars to, watching your chickens remotely. There's a lot going on. We need to leverage what's there for the good of all. And we need to have conversations so that we become aware. Yes, sir.
There's a possibility of having some negative effect also from addiction to artificial intelligence. Use it too much, buy too much, carry it.
Absolutely. I mean, the idea of artificial intelligence to do what humans can do, which was the original concept going back to John McCarthy back in the 50s. How could we get machines to do what humans do from the labor point of view? But now we take it, I use the navigation system all the time. So, yeah, absolutely. We can't get it addicted, and that makes it tough for us to want to separate a little bit. And I don't think that we're going to separate. I think it's part of life now. The question is, what do we do? How do we make it accountable to the whole of society?
And seeing that picture with the plastic, it takes 400 years for a piece of plastic to disintegrate. So again, I would beg everyone to please rethink your use of plastic, which you can't get away from. But if you're going to use those water bottles, please be sure and recycle them.
So this is, let's go ahead and just so y'all know that I have some legit research going on there. But go to this last slide. It does, it has a potential for good. It has the potential for negative. By inaction or negligence, let's not let it be negative. Let's at least talk about it. And again, I want to point out, the younger generation doesn't have any more answers than we do. They don't know how it works. They can't explain it. Just come to my class tomorrow and ask around. What that generation doesn't have is our ability to look at other technology. Well, they have Google, of course, but they don't have the lived experience. And that's what we bring to the table: wisdom and hope. Any questions? I know we're getting short on time, but I just want to open it up. I also want to say thank you for having me back and allowing me this other chance. Is there anything else that y'all would like to talk about with artificial intelligence, or any questions that I may or may not be able to answer? I'm not any further along than y'all, except in terms of sort of an awareness. Yes, ma'am.
So really quick, I kind of had a thought, in art and design, we have this theory, it's called uncanny valley. And that kind of theory, it states that the closer you get to human likeness, the more likely you are to back away from it. Do you see that impacting anything with kind of as sort of like an issue with overcoming our acceptance or kind of things? I know when you have AI, you talk about there's a lot of different realms. When you're talking about super intelligence, do you feel like that has a larger impact in that kind of field? Or do you even see us maybe breaching the uncanny valley at some point in time?
I think that over time, we already interface with computers like we do humans in a lot of the time. Some of them may have Siri or Alexa or some other assistant that you speak natural language to, and it speaks back. So that sort of human interaction, we're already getting embedded into our lives. The first robots probably that we have available to us is probably not going to be in the form of a cyborg or human-like object. But over time, for whatever reason, it just seems like we gear towards that. So at first, and you can already see this with some of the tests that are being done, that robot that looks like a human and talks like a human. There's the Google sentient thing. If you haven't looked at that or seen any of the news reports, you might want to. It's a little bit off-putting. Over time, though, we get used to it, and over time, we're actually more comfortable with that human. Yes.
If you look at it as a whole, I think it's created just big problems that were solved. Common sense is about wrong.
Well, that is the challenge, yeah, absolutely.
And then it's created, drugs are all sold on, kids are transferred, bought and sold. The kids make fun of each other and the kids kill themselves.
In some ways, it hasn't created new problems, it's just exacerbated the ones that already existed.
Well, as you continue to research, and if you come across that aha moment, something that can't be done, you'll let you know.
I'll let you know, y'all be the first to know. You'll the aha.
Yeah.
Thank you again, I appreciate our time.
Thanks, and look forward to continued research that you have there. Next week, we have club day, so be thinking about the ways that you want this club to evolve and move forward. And then the week after that, it's stage adjourned with Eric back. We'll all stand and go forward. Of the things say or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you all. Very well.